Hello and welcome. Aquariuser here, back with another video, and today we are looking at, believe it or not, a Bruiser build. Now, Season 3 is coming up, and I did want to make sure that I got out this video because I really have been enjoying this build, and honestly, come Season 3, with the flail, I want to incorporate the flail into this build in some way. So I figured, why not put this build out there? This is Great Axe with Hammer. We'll put this out there. I'll show you what I've been working on, show you kind of what I plan on doing, you know, even in the future, not just for the rest of the season. And you'll see why I'm really liking this build so much. Now, I am not one that normally likes Bruiser builds in the past. I've just not had very much fun with it. I've not been the best at it, but part of that is I just don't have fun with it as much. I don't enjoy the combos and stuff. But I've come up with this build that really has helped me to have a lot of fun with the build, or with Bruiser, and really enjoy the role itself. So that is what we're going to be looking at today, and kind of getting into kind of the lead up into Season 3. Before we fully get into today's video, I just want to say, if this video does help you out, please drop it a like. It really helps me out a lot. And if you want to see more content like this, definitely subscribe to the channel. You'll get notified when new videos go up, and you can definitely check out my current videos. But with Season 3 coming up, you don't want to miss any of those new videos and new builds and all of that. It's going to be a really good time, and I'm really, really excited for all the new content. I also stream throughout the week on Twitch, so if you do want to stop by a stream, we would love to have you over. If you want to lurk, chat, anything like that, I appreciate it, but you can definitely ask any questions live if you want, or just hang out. Either way, I appreciate the support, but let's get into today's video. Alright, as always, we are going to start with the gear. Now, some of you may have seen my old CC machine video. That is my hammer with spear build. And that is a really fun build. It's fun to kind of play, you know, up close in the OPR matches, you know, play the doorways and use those vault kicks and all the CC that you have available to you to really just like break their front line. But this is going to be a bit different because we're going back to Great Axe with Hammer, which is kind of your typical Bruiser build that a lot of people go with. But I have personally changed the Great Axe build to be a lot more fun for myself. It brings a lot of value to the build, and again, I just have a lot of fun with it, which was the most important thing for me for a Bruiser, since I typically don't have as much fun playing Bruiser. So let's start looking at the armor for those of you who did not see my CC machine video. So the way I went for this is I really like heavy armor. I came to the conclusion that if I'm going to play Bruiser, I want to play heavy armor. I like the tanky feeling. I like just being able to kind of like absorb more damage than normal. I know medium armor is still not bad for that, but I just like the tanky feeling of heavy armor as a Bruiser. That is what's fun for me. I've tried medium. I've tried, you know, various builds and stuff. This was the build that I liked, and heavy armor is just it for me. That's just my preference. You can definitely go the route of medium if you want for this build, or you could even utilize like the combinations of weapons and stuff that I'm doing. You could even use that in light armor if you wanted. But today's video is going to be revolved around heavy, because that is what I'm enjoying and having fun with. So as you can see, what you're going to see from my armor is going to be resilient, freedom, and a third perk of different perks, more or less, because it just kind of came down to what I could get my hands on. But everything that I have for my helmet, chest, gloves, pants, and boots, they all will have resilient and freedom, and then again, that third perk will be different. So as you can see, I have some refreshing evasion, a little bit of refreshing, more refreshing evasion, more refreshing evasion. I do like refreshing evasion for my PvP medium or heavy armor, because I'm dodging a lot. I can kind of force some of those cooldowns. You could definitely go with refreshing if you wanted, or you could replace those cooldowns with like an aversion. As you can see, my helmet, I have physical aversion. You could go with elemental. So it just kind of depends on how you want to run it. I like the cooldown, but you could definitely go tankier yet by getting aversion instead of the cooldown reduction with the refreshing evasion or refreshing. So that's what I got going for armor. As you can see as well, I do have rune glass slotted into my armor pieces. So I actually go for the nature. And I'll kind of explain that once we get to the weapons, but I go with the nature buff. So throughout my weapon, or throughout my rune glass on my armor, I get a 10% buff to nature damage. So looking at my Jewelry next. We have my amulet, which I'm actually wearing 3 named pieces of jewelry, believe it or not. But my amulet is Scorpion Stone, so that gives me flame protection, empowered, and health. Now, those 3 perks for me, for PvP specific, are very, very important. If you're going to go with 2 perks for your amulet, I would suggest health and empowered. The empowered perk is actually really important for the way that I'm playing this build, because it allows you to actually stack all 3 of my Great Axe abilities with one specific empowerment. So empowered, health, those are the 2 that I would highly recommend. The 3rd perk, because I had Scorpion Stone, I stuck with flame protection because it just kind of works. A lot of flamethrowers, a lot of fire staffs in general, so I get a little extra flame protection. Pop the opal in there, so then I get a little bit extra on top. For my ring, I am wearing Champion's Ring, which is a very, very good PvP ring. If you don't have it, definitely run that PvP track and hope that it drops for you, because you definitely want this ring. It is very, very nice for PvP, all around a really good ring. For my earring, I have the Priestess Charm, which is a really nice one because you get the Refreshing Evasion, Refreshing Toast, Nimble. I have the extra stam regen, potion cooldowns, and then I get another stack of Refreshing Evasion, which for my build works really well since I want to work into that cooldown reduction with my dodges. So for me, great earring. And again, they're all 3 named named pieces of jewelry, so anyone could go out and get them. Champion's Ring is going to be the absolute hardest to get, though, because you just have to keep getting those PvP tracks and hope that it drops. Now on to the weapons, which this is where the build starts to get a little bit spicy. So we'll start with the hammer, because this is the hammer that a lot of you have seen. This is like my go-to hammer. I use it for my healer build. I use it for my DPS builds. I use it for I use it for a lot of stuff. It's really, really nice. It's a really, really nice hammer. I really love it. It works great. And this is where the nature damage comes into play. So with my hammer, I've really found that running the amber in it, so it converting some of that damage to nature in PvP, really helps me, because not as many people are going to have really high resistance to both nature damage and strike damage. A lot of times it'll be one or the other, or neither, because strike damage just isn't as popular as like thrust damage when it comes to trying to get that protection, or even slash damage. You know, you end up getting hit by a lot more slash and thrust than you do by strike, so a lot of people might not even worry about their strike damage as much. And then nature damage, you might get a few people with higher resistance to nature, but on average they're probably going to go more towards fire than they would nature. So that's where it leaves us with this amazing hammer that kind of covers both ends of it. Physical, elemental, we get Sundering Shockwave, Arboreal Attunement, and then the Trenchant crits. You can absolutely destroy people, because that 30% extra critical damage is a ton. It's very, very good. And with Season 3, with the changes to Resilient, that I can only imagine will be even stronger. So that is what I got for my hammer. And now for the Great Axe. This is the Great Axe that I am running. There is only one perk on here that I would say, if you can get it, definitely go for it. So what we're running here is a Great Axe with Vicious, Fortifying Whirlwind, Keenly Empowered. Fortifying Whirlwind is absolutely insane if you have it on your Great Axe especially. So looking at it, you can see it says Whirlwind hits grant Fortify, increasing armor by 15% and slash damage by 12% for 2 seconds. Max is 5 stacks. So if you count that up, for the Fortify alone, that's 75% extra armor if you land 5 hits, and your slash damage gets increased by 60%. So it is an absolute massive increase in damage. And then if you have Keenly Empowered, you're going to hit a crit more than likely with your Whirlwind or something in there. That's going to trigger your 15%. So now you've stacked your 60% of slash damage with a 15% empowerment. Now, I really don't know what the cap is for some of these buffs. I know that slash damage, usually you can't get slash damage that high up, based on other weapons and jewelry and stuff. There's no real way to get slash damage that high unless you're using Whirlwind. So I really am curious If you know that there is a cap to slash damage, please let me know down in the comments because I'd be really curious. But you're able to stack a lot of damage utilizing Whirlwind and then with a Keenly Empowered on top. And then once we get into the Great Axe build, you'll see there's even more damage stacks that you can add to it, right? So Fortifying Whirlwind is an absolutely necessary perk. I would say Keenly Empowered is also really important, but Fortifying Whirlwind is the #1 most important thing for on your Great Axe. Now, looking at my Rune Glass, the Rune Glass is a very specific choice for me. I went with Jasper, not only because I'm taking damage consistently, so I'm always getting an extra damage buff, but when you take a Jasper and you turn it into a Rune Glass, right? So when you Rune Glass a Jasper, you do not lose any of the damage buff. So let's say you go with an Opal, right? Let's say you Rune Glass an Opal for your weapon. When you Rune Glass that Opal, it will drop down to 12%. It'll drop from 15% buff to a 12% buff because you get the Rune Glass side of it. With a Jasper, it goes from 15 to 15 with 2 ticks of nature damage on top of that. So 2 ticks of 8% nature damage, right? So now we're going back to the nature damage. 2 ticks of 8%. Well, I have an extra 10% of nature damage on top of that, right? So now those 2 ticks are increased by 10%. My overall damage is increased by 15% when I'm hit. I've got my Whirlwind that's giving me 60% slash. I've got my Keenly Empowered that's doing 15% increase. And we haven't even talked about the actual build itself. So just in gear alone, you are able to stack a ridiculous amount of empowerment and a ridiculous amount of just overall slash damage and damage overall, right? So it's pretty crazy the way that I have this set up. I'm really, really happy with it. As a heavy armor, I'm doing damage that's upwards of medium or light armors practically. And to that point, looking at the empowerments, it makes a lot more sense why we have empowered and why I really am pushing the empowered side of it. Because with the Whirlwind and with the Keenly Empowered, like you just want to keep those buffs rolling. So definitely having the Empower is really, really nice. For my rune or for my heart rune, I do run vines. I've ran detonate. I've ran bile bomb. See what works best for you. I'm really liking vines right now. It's working really well for OPR with this build for me. So I would suggest vines, but try whatever works for you. Honestly, with this build, just use whatever heart rune is fun. And to be honest, have fun with your heart runes. I think that's one of the most important things with heart runes too, is have fun with them. Some of them just look cool, and I like to use them because they look cool. But just have some fun with them. See what works for you. All right, so we finally got through the gear. I know that was a bit lengthier of a gear talk, but the gear is really, really, really important for this build, and I wanted to go through it in depth. So next, we're going to take a look at attributes really quick and then hop into mastery right after that so you can see where even more of this damage is stacking. All right, taking a look at the attributes here, you can see it's a pretty straightforward layout. What I do is I do 160 HP, I take a 40 con food that gets me up to the 200 mark, so I get the extra physical and elemental armor, and then I make sure that I've got 300 strength, so then my base damage to my heavies is increased by 10%. This layout, I've tried more con, and I felt like the damage dropped off too much. Any less con, and I'm not tanky enough. So the 200 con with food and then 300 strength or more is definitely the route that I'm going right now. Now, Season 3, when we have more attributes, that might change, or it for sure will change. I don't know if I'll go higher strength or higher con. And then obviously once we add flail into it, who knows what will happen. But for right now, this is the attribute layout that I am going with. Let's go take a look over at the weapon builds now. Okay, next, looking at the weapon builds here, we'll start with hammer. This is a more common hammer build for me. I definitely run this either with my DPS, Bruiser, healer build. I mean, this is just kind of my go-to. I always go with Wrecking Ball, Shockwave, Path of Destiny. Path of Destiny obviously is going to be my kind of try to peel, try to slow people down through the doorways on an outpost, anything like that. Shockwave obviously is pretty major, especially with Sundering being on the hammer itself. And then Wrecking Ball giving us that fortification, which is really, really nice because then we can have fortify whether our great axe or our hammer's out. And then for our passives, a lot of it goes into cooldown reduction for like heavies, some exhaust, damage increase. Grit is really important too for the heavies. And then I do make sure that I get aftershock, so then they are slowed whenever they're affected by one of our crowd control effects. So um, hammer build, very CC specific. I like to go for CC. You could go with clear out as well. You could go clear out instead of wrecking ball if you wanted, but I just really like wrecking ball for the extra CC of it, as far as like CCing them right in front of you. Because once we get into the Great Axe build, I'll kind of show you more so why I like wrecking ball. But this is the build that I go with for hammer. Again, pretty straightforward. I don't change too much from one build to another for this. Next, looking at the Great Axe, this is where it gets a little bit funky with the build. So this was like a build that I originally started out with. Instead of execute, I actually had gravity well. And gravity well worked fine. I was getting some good groups, some, stuff like that. And then I was talking to my buddy Scoob, and he was saying, gravity well doesn't feel great with my build. And he's like, I used to run execute. And so he was trying it, and I was like, well, that's a good point. I should just try it and see, because I really love execute, but I never saw it as like an overly viable weapon. But he said that he used to run it and it worked really well for him, so I decided to give it a go and start using it more. And I gotta say, I absolutely love execute. Especially as a heavy armor, it's an ability that allows me to actually have burst as a heavy, which I'm not used to, especially with Great Axe. I know you have Maelstrom, right? And Maelstrom's decent burst. But when you add an execute on top of it, as well as all of the damage stacking that we're doing, it's really nuts. Because in OPR, I'm landing 5k plus crits sometimes with my execute and heavy armor, which is just crazy for me to be doing that much that much damage in heavy armor. You know what I mean? So it's pretty crazy. But let's take a little bit closer look at the build and see where some of these damage stacks are coming from. So starting with the Reap side, we did go with the light attack, so we get a little bit of extra empower. A lot of the Great Axe side revolves around empowerments, trying to stack damage with a little bit of survivability. Hammer side is more survivability with other fortifies and stuff. Next, we have the increased armor penetration of Great Axe attacks by 10%. If they're below 50, so then that allows us to do even more damage, like with our execute if someone is below 50. I do go with the keen edge, so we get a little extra crit damage as well as the critical condition. So then if they're below 30% health, we have an increase of 15% in our crit chance. So it's a pretty big increase in crit chance if they're below 30. And then obviously for execute, we go all the way down to the bottom there. So then we have a 100% increased crit chance if they're below 30. So if we hit someone below 30% with our execute, it's a guaranteed crit. And so we're stacking, the keenly empowered, we're stacking all that stuff into that crit. So it's kind of nuts. On the Mauler side, for Whirlwind, we do go all the way down to the bottom. You kind of have to if you want it to do the absolute most damage, because then when you're surrounded by 3, you do 30%. So when you jump into a group and you just start spinning, you do a crazy amount of damage. That whole time, you're ramping up your fortifying Whirlwind, so you get your slash damage. And then if you have Mauler's Fury, you're getting 3% increased damage for every hit that you're doing, up to 30% total. So you can get a massive increase in damage. And when you're using Whirlwind, when you have it leveled up, you can spin up to 7 times if you're just hitting people, right? So spin into a group 7 times, you're going, like if it's a group of 3 people, you're going to hit your max 10 stacks within 3 spins. Well, 3 or 4 spins, right? So now you're at max stacks. Then you drop your Maelstrom, which is going to pull everything in. And then if you didn't kill anything with that, then you drop your execute. And the reason why I do it in that order is because with the empowered amulet, it allows us to get all 3 of those abilities off while that empowerment's still going. So you can actually do a Whirlwind, stack all the damage, Maelstrom, try to pull everything in or one person in, and then your execute, which can actually, your execute can hit multiple enemies at once. And so you can actually hit a group of enemies with your execute with that and do massive damage, even if you don't kill them, because again, like you have a decent amount of burst, but you're still heavy armor. So a lot of it is like CC based with damage stacking to get that damage out. But a lot of times if your team's following up, you're going to really help clear out, you know, big groups of people. So that works really, really well. For some of our passives, we make sure that we get the grit with heavy because that's really important. And then we get increased armor when there's 3 or more foes, which again, when we're using our Whirlwind, we're doing 30% more damage. So you are stronger and essentially more durable when you're around bigger groups of people. So definitely, like, just throw yourself into the fight sometimes. Just make sure you're not throwing yourself into death. Obviously you're still going to want to make sure that you have like healers and stuff with you, because you're still going to take a lot of damage. If someone drops like a nullifying oblivion, you're going to lose a lot of those buffs. So that's just kind of something to think about. And then we do get you know, a little extra damage output from this, so even more damage when there's more people around us. So overall, everything on the Great Axe is like revolved around just like, let's stack as much damage as we can. And even if we're at cap, let's say we hit, you know, empowerment cap at one point, we have different times on our empowerments and different empowerments that we have going, that essentially when one expires, we'll have another one up, and hopefully we can just like keep those empowerments just constantly rolling. That's kind of the idea, and it's really been working well for me. I've really, really enjoyed it. But yeah, that is my Great Axe build that I have had the absolute most fun with so far. All right, next I have just a few clips of this build in action from one of my OPR matches that was actually really, really fun. But I got some pretty good clips, so I'll throw some of those up now so you can go and see a few execute finishes and stuff like that. But just really me going out and having fun with the build. So go enjoy some gameplay of my Bruiser build. All right, that is going to do it for today's video. So thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to drop this video a like if it did help you out. And please do not forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to get notified on new videos, because Season 3 is fast approaching. And I'm so excited for the new content to come and all the new builds and all that fun stuff that is going to come with the new content. So definitely make sure that you are subscribed to the channel to get notified on all of that. And I do stream throughout the week on Twitch, like I said before. So if you do want to stop by a live stream, ask some questions, or just hang out, we would love to have you by and just kind of watch the craziness. I do work on builds on stream as well sometimes. So sometimes you'll get kind of a sneak peek at a new build if you're watching stream. But that is going to do it for today's video. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.